city culture is that, and this is all my opinion, the thing about city culture is that everything's street oriented. So, people are in the streets in the north. Doesn't really mean you're a bad person. A lot of times it's about space and land. So you will have working class people who would get off work and they would still hang with their families in the streets. They might turn the sprinklers on and they would play street ball and stick ball and all kinds of games, but you played in the streets. So it wasn't like it was just only bad people. The streets didn't have this negative connotation in the city of New York. It's just street life. My mother, again, parenting situation with him, my mother was given away at birth. She was raised by a family in the north. She was actually born in a place called Bethel, North Carolina, which is like 15 minutes down the road in this dock town. Well, she didn't know this because she was given away at birth and raised in Connecticut. So she grew up and was found out as an adult that the person that she thought was her mother and her father, in fact, were not that at all. And she had tons of family in North Carolina, like 8 sisters, 5 brothers, and a mother whom she had never met. And I guess during her childhood, her parents had divorced, her supposed parents had divorced, and her dad was a very good caregiver, a very good provider. So when he divorced, he went back down south. So I think in my mind, she was coming back down south to try to not only find her family that she had heard about, but also reconnect with her father, who, when he left and divorced his wife, there was a huge gap in her life. So she got down here and being accustomed to city life, mind you, at the time I'm about, I say we tried to come down here once when I was about 8, but we came down here finally like 45 when I was about 11. And I think she just let us go to the streets because that's what we did in the north. You came home, you put your books down, and you did the streets. But it wasn't for crime or trouble. We just did it. So when we got here, I think she didn't understand that element down south is a little different. If you're in the streets down south, no working families in the streets down south. No middle class people are in the streets down south. If you're in the streets down south, you're an element that nobody wants to deal with. So she released us of that element, and I was out there just bright-eyed, like I could run. I was one of the very few young kids that could just rip and run the streets. So I took to the culture down here, and I immediately realized it was a different culture. For me, it's a very ignorant culture. The conversation wasn't enlightened conversation. It was just different, you know. And I remember being a child, just looking up at the guys who were what we call like the real gangsters, and who really ran the corners and stuff. You would listen to them talking, something they would talk about. You would like, it would make you want to go home and tell your mom, like, Mom, he was wrong. He said a lot of stuff that was wrong. You know, it didn't make any sense. But nonetheless, you soon realize that you control that area by being tough, by over talking to people. So you didn't necessarily have to be bright or intelligent. You could over talk people and intimidate people if you're told in that age you're right. So, you know, you learn those cues. And so, to make a long story short, I jumped out there and I picked up every negative element. So by the time I was 13, I was already selling drugs. I already started having, you know, relations with women. I was DJing in adult nightclubs. My daughter says she knows my story. So I was actually a DJ in adult nightclubs where there were adults partying and getting into that life and marijuana and alcohol, and I was just a young kid. I was just a cool city young boy that everybody likes, and it allowed me to I could go on stage. I learned how to rap by the age of 15, so I was doing like mini tours, and a lot of people who were popular things at that time. I performed with them, and I would take trips with what we call the local dope boys, and they would take me out on little mini tours, and I got to meet all the superstars, and I was out there, but I was dealing drugs all day, all night, all I did. I was good in school, but school, I excelled in school without effort. So my energy was put into living and learning to navigate the street environment. And so you fast forward that, and mind you, throughout all this time, I'm talking about picture a young guy, 13, 14 years old, out on the dark street at 3 or 4 in the morning, pocket full of drugs, pocket full of money, they get up, and that is your life. You don't even realize that it's bad or anything. It's just, it's life. It's actually as cool as a fan. You know, you're not going to have the negative consequences. So you fast forward, I started to become aggressive. I got identified early as a young guy, a young brother. to a 2024 high school graduation. I got busted for drugs, taken to jail 2 weeks before my graduation. But no worries. Plenty of money. I posted bond immediately, came back out, went to school the next day. No worries. I don't know the legal system. To me, all I know is they arrested me, they have my name on some paper downtown, but the people downtown don't interact with our daily lives. So whatever charges they're writing up on me has nothing to do with my life. I know I have a court date coming, whatever, just keep on going. But after that, once you get busted the first time, now you get really on their radar. I started getting picked up for drugs back to back. I couldn't get in a car and ride down the street without an officer seeing me, pulling me, going to check me, and so forth and so on. But this was my activity, this is my life. So, now mind you, I'm getting a better shape than most people. So for me, I'm not the worst case. I'm actually, if you were to see me, you would probably like me. I was outgoing, I was personable, I dressed pretty well, I carried myself well. I didn't feel like I was really getting the negative shape that many people were getting, because I felt like I was getting the best. So I had a great crew, they made a lot of money, they spent a lot of money. They opened up businesses. I was a 3-strike felon before I was open up to drink and alcohol. So by 21, how they say, 3 strikes you're out? Well, I was that before I was even an adult, long gone. So I got in so much trouble that my lawyer was finally like, hey, listen, I can help you to a certain extent. Like there's some things you're gonna have to do, get a job. Because I never worked before. And at this time I'm about to be 21 now. And I never had a job and never done anything. So he said, you're gonna have to, get a job. Because when you go to court, I'm fighting for you, but there's some things you need to show. So I went and got a job to abuse my lawyer. And I got hired at this place across the street from ECU. It's not there anymore. It's where the Arby's is now. It was Miami Subs back then. And I went there and the guy, he gave me a chance without ever having any work experience. So I took the job. And within 5 months, I was manager. The funny thing is, though, to a local street kid, some of the elements of being a local street kid or coming from a depressed environment is low social connections, low involvement in different extra activities. So the oxymoron or the other side of that coin is that you have someone who's not dedicated to anything. So when you take a young street kid, you can get them dedicated to whatever because they have no connections to anything like this. So I think that, along with some other values and maybe gifts, allowed me to get right into that job and just kind of take it over. Of course, companies will use you once they realize that they can use you however. So they couldn't wait to give me a key to say, hey, if you're trustworthy, you can run this store. But it was an eye-opening experience because I had never experienced ECU kids, and I had never experienced people like outside of like drug dealers and people that wanted to fight and shoot and do whatever. I never really experienced real people, and I actually thought that your side of the world was like the lame side. Like that's what I thought. I felt that as the world, man. We were ripping and running through towns. We had pretty much all the women that we wanted, all the money that we wanted. How they make it in the video with champagne at the club and all this stuff going on. But that was my life, And it was like people who got up in the morning and put on khakis and went to work, and they were married and they didn't even like their wives and they didn't like their jobs, and they people just don't look happy in the world, So it's like my assumption was that the only way a person would live that life voluntarily is if they were scared. So these people are punks. They don't possess any strength to live and boldness to dare to be whatever they're going to make their lives, whatever. But when I got over there and I experienced ECU students, I said, these kids having fun. They were some of the brokest people I've ever seen in my life. I couldn't understand. I mean, they would come to Miami Subs, and the 3 of them, they would order fries. And they would share the fries with 2 or 3 people, and they would just fine. And I remember thinking, I got accepted to college one time. And the only thing on my mind was that, man, I have all this money, and if I go to school, I'm not going to have this money. And I don't think I'm going to do that. I don't think I'm going to live that, but because I didn't want to be poor. Mind you, from speaking about poverty, I started selling drugs at 13 years. So I had experienced not having money from the age of 13, because really not, and I had a great mother. She wasn't on drugs, she didn't drink, she didn't hang out with the neighborhood girls in the neighborhood. She wasn't those kind of moms that sat on the porch with the flip flops and the fly swatter. And, you know, she was straight mom, you know, and she wasn't a neighborhood mom at all, in any shape, form, or fashion. But you know, but she didn't have the money to take care of me. So, and once I started making money at 13, I stopped asking. I was buying my own clothes, I paid my own fees in school. But if I wanted to go on a trip, I paid for the trip myself. It didn't matter. I bought my own first car at 17. Well, let me skip that story. But long story short, I had experience not having money. So watching the ECU students was like, man, you know, I was scared to go to school because I didn't want to live to be broke, and it seemed weird. So now I'm looking at y'all like, you guys are the punks, but I'm the punk because I'm afraid to not have money. There's such a fear that's invoked when you grow up, and that's to me that's one of the true essences of poverty. To be poor in spirit, to be so poor in spirit that you can't stand to not have, so you're willing to compromise yourself in order to get something. When you're raised poor, it's not always about not having, it's the mentality that you don't have, and makes you willing to do things to get it. So it drives these type of neighborhoods crazy. Everybody's impressed, or they're hard pressed to get you, and that is a very touching idea to put in your head. So watching these things, I learned, you know, being broke is its own, internal struggle, and those who will seek to have something in life are going to have to be willing to go there, go to that broke period or that period of not having. It's called sacrifice. So all these eye-opening experiences, and I learned that I like business. So my friends and I, they were, making pretty decent money on the other side of things, but we said we're going to get out of that life and we're going to invest in a nightclub. And we're going to go into business. So that's what we did. We opened up a nightclub on 5th Street. We actually do some ECU parties and some other things, but went into business, and I never looked back. It was called Club Chasers. And are you familiar with that? Oh, really? Okay. All right, good deal. So I never looked back to drugs. Never went back to it. Never. Mind you, the money. We started to see money that was a lot better, and it wasn't a point. But so no more drug dealing, no more anything. But we were advertising for something called the Debt Collection Network. So we had Method Man and Red Man and Keith Murray and Joe Buttons and Freeway and all these different rappers who some of you may or may not heard of. We had them coming through. And we would get these flies out there. We had a firearm in the car, and the police pulled our car open, and they went to check and search the car, found out there was a firearm in there. And that's not a problem. So North Carolina, but because I was in a car and I was a convicted felon, then that was a huge deal. So from that point, that happened in 2002. They confiscated the gun, put it through court process, and they kind of wrote, they took us back to court, but they ended up throwing it out. Well, in 2005, still operating the nightclub, I go through a traffic jam, a traffic block, a road stop. And I give them my information. They say, you have a warrant. You're wanted by the ATM. It's the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. It's federal, government, and you have a warrant with it. And at this point in time, it's 9 o'clock in the morning. I have a suit on. I run a local business. I hadn't sold drugs in years, and they took me downtown to serve this warrant on me, and they said, we looked at your profile. You are a felon. 3 years ago, you were in that car with the gun. And we have this program where we're trying to get drugs and guns off the streets. And according to your profile, you would fit well for this program and help yourself. And I said, well, you need a snitching? I was like, well, we don't call it that. But we've got these 3 years to give you. And either you take these 3 years in prison, or either you help us, or you take these 3 years in prison. And me, I said, well, I'm going to have to take these 3 years in prison because for me, I left the street game alone for a long time. And the real reason why I left it alone is because all that violence, I engaged, and make no mistake, a lot of violence, a lot of just every time you turn around, whatever they talk about on the news, that's real. That's every single day. And that was my life. And the funny thing about it is if you lose all the violence, if you get beat up or you get shot at or you get shot, sometimes that's better. Because to be the one doing the shooting, to be the one that's not losing, you become something. I think Abraham Lincoln, it was a quote, no man attacks me with him, means that if you attack me, in order for you to raise a fist to attack me, you have to assume a position of attack. And assuming that character does something to you. You get what I'm saying? Because and if you do that over and over again, you become an attacker. So no matter how many times I get beat up, look what you become. So as a person who's winning in that environment, I was becoming something to where, mind you, I just started to work these jobs, and that showed me that I was different. Because when I engaged with regular people, I had this snarl to me when I was talking. I had this clenched fist thing, and I was, even though I didn't mean this to people, but there was nothing I could do to be like everyone else. And I realized that I had become a bit of a monster. Even though I could be having a great day, just my whole demeanor, it was kind of a hunchback. That thing we do in the neighborhood is there on me. So I realized that the lifestyle, even in winning, I was losing. So when they came to me with this proposition saying, hey, come to work and do whatever they for me, I explained to the officer, I said, listen, man, I got out of the streets, not because people were beating me up, not because I was losing money, I was doing well. But I got out because of what I was becoming. And if I were to go back to that lifestyle for the money, you can believe I would go back for whatever threat you think you have over my head. So whatever it is you need to give me, you need to handle that, right? We'll go ahead. I called their bluff. They called it back and they gave me every single day. So I went on this long prison run and went through the federal prison system and did almost 3 years. And this is where innocent civil starts to come to life. I get inside the prison system, and as soon as they get me there, it's an entirely different system. It's if anyone knows anybody have a relative or anybody that's served prison time that they were close with, I feel like most people have. Well, if you ever hear the stories, everything's weird. Like the money in prison is honey buns, tuna fish, postage stamps, roll up cigarettes. So if you're going to exchange but you can go to prison and be like a boss. But if you are a boss in prison, your bank account will be your locker. And your locker, some of the guys who were bosses in prison, they had lockers stacked. If you can envision this, lockers stacked with tuna fish cakes on top of each other. That means that this cat was balling. This cat had, he could buy anything he wanted. These guys walking around in prison with Jordans on. Prison don't even sell Jordans. So how is it that, how is that even possible? But they say, well, Jay, you're coming off the streets, you have a little money. Some of my friends were there. So they said, we're going to show you the ropes. We're going to show you how to open up a store and gave you some business because you're going to have to do these years and your family's going to stop sending you money like now and let's make it happen. And I said, hold on, slow down now. I'm not going into the honeymoon business. Like, I'm not a tuna fish house. I consider myself to be on a higher level. Right? Y'all following this now, listen. So they say, well, Jay, you talk that talk all you want to. You're going to have to do these years. And you better figure it out. I said, well, funny thing is, again, you have to watch what your situation causes you to do. Because situations I've learned in life, the situations are always unsafe. And they go up and down. So if you become whatever the situation dictates you to be, then you don't exist. You are your situation. And that may be fine for everyone else, but the situations that I live through every day, I can't stoop to whatever that situation calls for because I get in some big situations. So I'm going to have to learn how to maintain something about who I am regardless of my situation and make me the constant. So I said, no, I'll pass on that. Whatever it is I have to do, I'll do mine. I'll drink mine straight from the streets. I do the time. I watch them. Now, mind you, prison facility might be like this. This might be a pod where, in actuality, all 15 or 20 of us may sleep in this pod, but they'll give us like cells and bunks to where he may be my cellie, he may be doing whatever. And then there's another one back there. So it's a facility with maybe 1,500, mostly minority males. And you would think that in that level of confinement that you would just sit, right? But these guys hustle. gambling, card games at night. I mean, it's just, and I'm sitting back like, hold on now, with all of this moving and hustling for honey buns though, I said, man, you know, I couldn't bring myself to go to that great lengths for honey buns. And I said, man, the funny thing about it is though, what I call honey buns, the rest of your people, the rest of the world, called what we were doing out here. See, these guys are robbing, stealing, shooting, wheeling, drug dealing for trees. You know, we may finish our hustle there, and we go, you know what we do? We go take them all. We go get us some chains, cars, champagne at the club, honey bun stuff to the rest of the world, because the rest of the world is sacrificing for, you know, properties and degrees and titles and things that will take you to what you consider far. So I begin to question, you know, who sets the criteria for what it is that we are willing to hustle and give our lives to? Who does that? Who waves that magic wand and says, because you're in this environment, you will give your life for this much, you will give your life for this much. People appear there hustle. Same 24 hours a day that we give our lives for. But who set this? And it became apparent to me that no one does. It's, you just take the cues from your environment. And it hit me. It said, you know, no one ever gave any of us a choice. I'm a firm believer that for the lot of you all, you are actually chasing something within the realm of what your society or your culture dictates as value. You don't quite know how valuable it is. You don't really know. But it's socially valuable, which means if you were to achieve this degree, you would be held in esteem based in your area. But you don't necessarily know if it's going to make an impact. You don't know if you're actually going to change the world. And that became an issue to me. And I said, you know, I felt like I had been tricked by my environment. All those nights I spent with all those drug dealers, all those men on the corner with the weird concepts I couldn't understand, all the violence, all these things that said I had to be tough. I had to get that money. I had to have, pretty women and a lot of in order to be considered held in esteem among my peers. I had to walk a certain way and talk a certain way to get my message across, or else I wasn't understood. All of those things I developed to survive, but only in this small environment. Because the minute I stepped outside of that environment, the rest of the world treated me like an animal because of these characteristics that I had adopted in my life. Because I wasn't born with my shoulders hunched like this. I wasn't born snarling my lip when I talk to somebody. So all of those things were attributes and characteristics that I had picked up in the course of living in this environment. So I said, man, and mind you, I consider myself to be a very intelligent person. Even in school, I was identified as academically gifted as early as the 3rd grade, and they had to take me out of regular classes and put me in more accelerated classes because I couldn't sit in a classroom and work at a pace where the general class would work at. I was gone. So by a lot of standards, I'm exceptional. And the thing about being exceptional, a little sidebar to exceptionality, anybody know that there's a thing called social mobility or class mobility? Anybody familiar with that concept? I'm sure you guys are. Well, that's a measure of how many people actually break out of the class they were born into and over the course of their life. Does anybody have an idea of what the percentage, what the class mobility numbers are? Anybody?
5%.
5%? What would you say, Michelle?
The breakout?
Yeah, that percentage of people that actually move up.
I'm gonna do 2.
2%.
I have no idea.
It's about 2 to 5. Something about 3.5. And of course, that always fluctuates right now. So what that says is that no matter what group, middle class, high class, low class, impoverished area, no one is possessing the aptitude to break out. No one. Only the exceptional people are getting out of any class. So now we get to look at poor people and say, well, why aren't you doing what you're doing to get out? Well, what are you guys not figuring out that will allow you to get up out of your environment? But truth be told, world, none of us have really broken the mold on how to, and here's what we're asking people to do. What we're asking people to do is learn to possess and put off a certain set of skills and characteristics that you have never been, that are totally inconsistent with what you've been shown your entire life. Which means you're gonna have to pull that from a place. Where do you draw from? Because we draw from a lot of places. But not many of us are able to draw out of thin air, concoct new ideas, and then not only concoct new ideas, but have the faith and the strength, or whatever you want to call it, to walk when the entire world around you is walking on something else. That's a very intense thing you're asking a person to do. So as I do outreach, I'm never too hard on my young brothers, or what I call my young homies, because I understand that people celebrate me and they congratulate me. And now I'm at a point where not only do I run a local organization that serves the community, but I'm also, I work to get my methods adopted and accepted inside the major institutions. So through that work, I've also been given a post at the community college to outreach to them. They're working on deals to get me an office inside of the local recreation center. So we'll get to NC City, but part of that is representation inside the major institutions. So I've earned this certain level of professional standing, but then people congratulate me and they say, man, look at him, he's an example of what all of them can do. So let's take him and raise him up as a flag, and let's put him in front of them so that they can see that they can do it too. And then they clap for me, and everybody congratulates me all the time, and I appreciate it. But it's almost like going through a war with 100 of your childhood friends, and all of them get slaughtered. And you get to the end, and people are clapping for you like you made it. And you like, they just killed all my friends. Everybody, like all my homies, all my close, they are literally in prison, dead. And if not, they are incapacitated to where they're still in like the projects at 40, 35 years old, 30 years old, smoking on a blunt, can't function, can't do anything for their children, can't do anything for their parents. They're gone and will never, ever come out. So I celebrate myself, but it's like, no, America, we haven't solved the problem here. There's still only, whatever intelligence we're working with, there's still only 3% of the people that are getting out. And me, now until we're creating